I'm going to show you two login screens. This one has email ID and password fields as the hero with the social login buttons only at the bottom. And this one treats every login option, Google, Apple, email as equal buttons. If you immediately have an opinion on which one is better, I want you to hold on to that opinion for the next 60 seconds because I bet you are asking the wrong question. The beginner instinct in design is to rank. This is better than that. This looks more pro. This is the right way. The senior instinct is to ask context first. What kind of product is this? What does it do? Who are the people using it? On which device are they going to log in? How often do they log in and log out? These context changes the decision a lot. For many of you, option 1 might feel like the obvious winner because the social logins are upfront. It's much easier to tap on a button rather than typing username and password. But would you do it on a banking app? People don't want their bank accounts linked to their social accounts. They want a formal, isolated, and secured entry point. Social login here would actually make the users trust the product less. In fact, for a banking app, a username or password may not be adequate. They might have an OTP-based two-factor authentication as well, maybe biometrics and whatnot. But if this is a consumer app where users log in once a week and just want to get back in fast and prominently placed social buttons actually win. Email and password become friction. The fastest path is continue with Google, and giving it equal weight respects how the user actually wants to use the product. Same two screens, different products, completely different right answer. That shift from ranking to reasoning is one of the 5 things that separate beginner work from senior work. It's the one I want to start with because it sits underneath the other 4. Let's get right into it. So that was the first one, context before verdict, and the rest of the video is about the other 4. 4 more places where senior designers are thinking one level higher than actually what's on screen. I'm going to walk through each of them on Framer because for some of these, especially like the ones about motion and systems, you can't really show the difference in a static slide. You'll have to see it move. So let's go. Number 2, hierarchy across the flow. Most designers, when they hear hierarchy, think about one screen. Make the headline bigger, make the CTA bolder, make the secondary action grayer. That's correct, but it's the small version of the idea. The bigger version, the one that separates senior work, is hierarchy across the flow. Here's a flow of screens. It's simple e-commerce app. Of course, I was highly inspired by the other e-commerce apps like Amazon and Flipkart while designing these samples. The homepage or the storefront, the product details page, and the checkout or the cart page. 3 pages. A junior designer would design each of these to look as good as possible individually. They will think about the consistency, the aesthetics, noticeability, and function. All those are important, of course. But a senior designer asks a different question first. Which of the screens needs to feel heavier than the other and why? Because every page in this flow has a different job. The landing storefront page is high energy. It is pulling attention from a stranger. It can afford to be visually rich, dense, and even slightly loud because the main purpose of the screen is discovery. Users come here to discover what they would want to buy. This is like the showcase when you visit an actual brick and mortar store. People who know exactly what they want to buy, they will either go to one of these categories or go ahead and search directly. That is called wayfinding. After discovering and wayfinding, when they're curious about one product and want to see more details, they get into the product detail page. This has all the details, reviews, specifications, images, variants of the products. This is the page where the user actually takes a decision whether they will buy it or not because they are comparing, scanning, and doing the math in their head all at once. Hence, you will notice this page feels much more calm compared to the previous discovery page. In fact, the first half of the page is mostly textual details without any bright colors or banners or any other distraction. It's focused only about a single product, which is this phone in this case. Only towards the second half of the page, you will notice them showing some influencer stories and some other products in case after going through the details page, the user decide that this is not the right product for them. So they have a few widgets for similar products or frequently bought items and so on. Then comes the checkout page, the cart. This is the final stage before the user actually makes a payment. A very critical page. You wouldn't want to do anything unnecessary which would deter the user from making the purchase. If it is visually busy as the landing page, you will lose them. The senior decision here is to deliberately reduce visual energy. Less color, more white space, tighter type. You're making the page easier to think in a trust-building, calm energy. This is a no-nonsense page with just the product and the build details, with only a few things that can be upsold, like the insurance or a phone case. Again, these things are to protect the item that you're buying with your hard-earned money. Look at the 3 pages together. The visual energy has a trend: high, low, lower. That's hierarchy across the flow. The user's cognitive load is being shaped by design across the screens and not just within them. Beginners design hierarchy on a screen, pros design hierarchy on a journey. And here's the related idea that goes with this. Emphasis is a budget and not a tool. Every time you bold something, color something, or increase a font size, or add a shadow, you're spending from a fixed budget of attention, the attention that your user has. The beginner instinct is to emphasize everything that feels important. The senior instinct is to remember that if everything is emphasized, nothing is. A pro will look at screens with 12 emphasized elements and ask which 3 are actually doing the work, then cut out the 9 back to neutral. A beginner makes things stand out. A pro decides what doesn't. Number 3, copy decides, doesn't describe. I know every designer has heard copy matters by now. UX writing has been a buzzword for a very long time. So let me push past that and tell you what I actually mean. Most copy in interfaces is doing one of the 2 jobs. It's either describing something to the user or deciding something with the user. Beginners write copy that describes. Pro writes copy that decides. Watch this. Same product, same layout, 3 different copy treatments. The first one is transform your workflow with our powerful platform. Now, this is the copy beginners will write because it describes the category and not the product. It could be for any tool. It commits to nothing. People often make this mistake because they think that their product is world famous and everyone knows about it. You're not Apple launching your next iPhone, that you'll go ahead and write the next best thing is in your hand. For you to write that copy and expect it to work, you'd have to be at the level of Apple, which in most cases you are not. Okay, version 2, slightly better copy would be track tasks, files, and deadlines in one place. Much better. They describe what the product actually does. A user reading this knows what exactly they're getting into. This is a competent copy. But let's take a look at version 3. It says stop losing track of who's doing what. Now, I would call this a pro version of copy because it doesn't describe the product and definitely not the category. It names the problem the users are already feeling, the problems that they're facing. It has a point of view and it sounds like a human wrote it. The third version is doing something which the first 2 aren't. It is deciding something with the user. It's saying, I know what your day looks like. I know why you are here. Let's just acknowledge and move on. That kind of copy converts because it builds trust before it builds a feature list. This applies everywhere in an interface, not just headlines. A button that says continue describes. A button that says yes, delete my account decides. An empty state that says no result found describes. An empty state that says try a broader search. Most filters here are pretty strict. Decides and helps. The pattern is everywhere once you see it. Here's the second part of this idea, and it's one I think most designers in India in particular need to hear. Most product copy in our market sounds translated. Not literally translated, but emotionally translated, written in a way that's safe, neutral, and forgettable. If your interface copy could be on 5 other products without anyone noticing, your copy is doing the smaller job. Beginners use copy to fill the screen. Pros use copy to take a position. Number 4, motion as spatial logic. This is the one I said most designers are getting wrong, and I now want to explain why. The standard advice on motion is don't add it for the sake of it. Use it for feedback, blah, blah. That's correct, but that's a surface version. The real senior insight is something different. Motion isn't decoration. Motion is the spatial logic of your product. Let me show you what I mean. Take a look at this. This abstract aurora on a starry sky, it forms a beautiful motion background for this website. Creates interest and amps up the aesthetics of the homepage on point. I didn't build this, by the way. This is a Framer template. But this is not what I meant by spatial logic. This is decoration done in a tasteful way. Now check this. Feels like very normal, right? Clicking on a button opens a model. Now take a closer look at it. When I click on this change, the model scales up from the same strip where I had clicked the button on. My brain instantly understands where it came from. I don't think about it consciously, but the motion is teaching me. This thing belongs to that strip. And when I'm done, it goes back and sits on that same strip. Now watch this version. Same model, different motion. Now my brain reads this in a little different way. This is a separate place where I have been taken to and not a layer on top of that same strip, if you know what I'm saying. Nothing is wrong in this one. And even this is normal, absolutely normal. You see it in many products. But the previous one has a much more superior spatial logic. If you notice and understand the difference between these two transitions, congratulations, you're already thinking at a pro level. That's what motion is doing in a mature product. It's not just a decoration. It's actually a boring thing, but it is teaching the user where things live in the system. Side panels slide in from side because that's where they live. Confirmation dialog scales up from the center because they're temporary and modal. Pages transition horizontally when you're moving sideways through a hierarchy and vertically when you're going deeper. Apple has historically built their entire interaction language on this idea. Every motion in iOS at its best was teaching you the system. Most apps don't think this way at all. They use motion because it looks nice, or because the design tool made it easy, or because someone on the team thought it felt premier. That's beginner thinking. This video is sponsored by Framer, and the reason I agreed to do this is genuinely this. In Framer, motion is built into the canvas, not added on after. You're not prototyping motion. You're designing it, and whatever you design ships as the actual website. The reason that matters for this topic of this video is when motion is easy to design, you start using it the way pros use it, as spatial logic, as communication and not as polish. If you want to try Framer, link is in the description, free to start. One more thing on motion before we move on. The best motion in product design is felt and not noticed. If a user finishes using your app and remembers that transition probably failed at its actual job. Motion is supposed to make the interface feel coherent without requiring conscious attention. Beginners want their motion to be admired. Pros want their motion to be invisible. Number 5, think in systems and not screens. Last one, and honestly, if I had to pick one of these 5 that actually separates a senior designer from everyone else, it would be this one. Most designers, when they hear systems thinking, defaults to design system. Components, tokens, a library. That's a part of it, but it's the smallest part. A design system is an artifact. Systems thinking is something else entirely. Systems thinking is the ability to see that the screen in front of you is not the problem you're solving. It's one expression of a problem that exists in many places. Let me show you what I mean. A junior designer gets a brief, designs a build detail section, they open Figma, they design a beautiful card, they ship it. Done. A senior designer reads the same brief and immediately starts asking different questions. Where else would this build section appear in the product? Is it on the confirmation page, the right completion page, the account section, past writes? Does it appear in emails, in push notifications, on the partner dashboard? Because if I'm designing this card without understanding all the places it lives, I'm not designing a card. I'm designing a problem for the next designer who has to figure out why my card doesn't work in 7 other contexts I didn't think about. Look at this, for instance. The right summary section, this bill section, these entries in the settings page, this help section, these payment methods, and a host of other things are made of this single master row element. You use this in various combinations to get all these different kinds of items we have just spoken about. Having master components like this can massively simplify your design process, but coming up with such master components is not a simple task at all. It is not about building or designing that component. It's about figuring out in your head what all could be combined into one master so that it makes sense. This needs you to have a very good understanding of the architecture of the app in your head. That's the first move of systems thinking. You never design one screen. You're designing a pattern that has to hold across different contexts. Here's a second move, and this one is harder to internalize. Every design decision has a second order effects. If I change master row item, what does it do to the rest of the app? If I add this onboarding step, what does it do to the drop of 3 screens later? If I make this button more prominent, what other action am I now de-emphasizing without even realizing it? Beginners optimize for the screen in front of them. Pros optimize for what happens because of the screen in front of them. This is the hardest part of design to teach, by the way, because it requires you to hold the entire product in your head while making a small decision and not just the preview of the screen. Most designers can't do it until they have shipped enough things to have been bitten by their own second order effects a few times. Watch this. I'm going to change one piece of context in the CMS here. It's just a simple portfolio website, right? I'll go ahead and change the title of one project in the content management system or CMS, and it shows up everywhere. The listing card, the detailed case study page, and everywhere else where I might have used an instance of this. One change, multiple places. That's not a Framer feature. That's the point. When you build something connected, every decision becomes a system level decision automatically. You cannot change something in isolation because nothing is in isolation. The reason this matters is once you start working this way, your decisions get a little slower but much, much better. You stop making changes that look right locally and break things globally. You start asking before any decision, what else does this touch? Here's a third move of systems thinking, and this is one that takes the longest to learn. What you don't design is also the part of design. The defaults, the empty states, the error cases, the things that happen when there's no data, when the network fails, when the users does something you didn't expect. Beginners design the happy path and call it done. Pros design the happy path and the system around it. What happens when reality deviates from the plan? A senior designer's mockups will always have more screens than a junior's for the same feature. Not because they are slower, because they have internalized that the design isn't just the success state, the design is the entire system of states the user might land in. This shift is also why senior designers seem calmer in design reviews. They're not defending a single screen. They're defending the way of thinking that produces screens. They have given so much of thought about the flow that they have everything in their head ready. And that's the reason why they're calm, because they know that any question that lands onto them, they would have a convincing answer because they would have already thought about it. If you ask them to change something, they're not just moving a button. They're checking what else moves when the button moves. That's the actual gap. Beginners design what's in front of them, and pros design the system the artifact lives inside. A beginner designs what they can see. A pro designs what they can predict. So those are the 5. Context before verdict, hierarchy across the flow, copy that decides, motion as spatial logic, and systems as leverage. Notice what all 5 have in common? They're all about thinking one level higher than the artifact. The beginner sees a screen, the pro sees a flow. The beginner sees a button, the pro sees a system. The beginner sees a transition, the pro sees a spatial model. That's the actual gap. It's not the visual craft, it's not the taste, it's not how clean your file is. It's whether you're operating at the level of the screen or at the level of the thing that the screen is a part of. Of course, all the things that I have mentioned a junior designer would do are also absolutely important. By having pro-level skills and thinking doesn't mean you don't do some of the other things. You just elevate yourself beyond that. Remember the 2 login screens at the start? If I asked you again now, which one is better? I'm hoping you would push back. You'd ask me what the product is, who's logging in, how often, what the trust threshold is. You'd refuse to rank them without context, and that's the move. That move applied to every part of the work is what senior designers actually looks like. If you're watched till here, tell me in the comments which of the 5 you think you are weakest at. I read most of them and the patterns are usually very, very interesting. That's all. See you all in the next one.